Hello and welcome back, everyone, to another Sales Hacker webinar. If this is your first time joining us, of course, an extra special welcome to you. I'm super excited for this topic today. But before I sort of introduce my guests and talk a little bit through the topic, super quick housekeeping. You can see everyone starting to pour in now. So number one is these are all recorded. So we always get people emailing us after saying, hey, can I get the recording? We'll actually proactively send it out to you within about 24 hours. So if you have to jump off, deal with some work from home problem or jump into a one-on-one with your manager, whatever it is, go and do that. We'll send this to you once we wrap up. Second thing is we do these panels, for the community. And so it's always the best when they're driven from you, from the community. I'm sure you have specific questions around this topic. That's where you joined the webinar. So please be interactive. So we've got a thoughtful discussion that we're going to go through, but I'm more than happy to let the attendees be in the driver's seat, and I'll be manning the Q&A, which is at the bottom. So get those questions in sooner rather than later. And also just go down to the chat feature. There's a chat feature. It's different than the Q&A, but it's always more fun when we know who we're rocking with. So jump on there, say hello, introduce yourself, name, company, and so we can say hello back. Cool. So what we're talking about today is 5 reasons why your sales contests suck and how to fix them. An extremely important topic right now. We've transitioned to this digital first world. Motivation is harder. Team camaraderie is harder. There's all sorts of things. So I'm really excited to look at this sort of from all angles. And we've certainly got the right people to talk through it. So introducing my guests, starting with Christina Brady. Christina, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here. I am excited to talk about this. This is probably one of the more fun panels, topics that I've talked about in a little bit, and it's meaningful. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So Christina is the president over at SalesAssembly. But I think it's always important to get a little more context than that. We're all more than titles. So what is kind of the superhero origin story of Christina Brady? How did you get to become a president at such a cool company?
Oh man, how much time do we have? I've the professional side of it is I've been in sales for about 15 years and got started as an insurance salesperson. Went over to Groupon and started there as an account executive, worked my way up to leadership over a little bit over a half of a decade, and found myself jumping in and leading a lot of pilot projects and kind of startups within a startup. Then went over to Glassdoor and I opened up the Chicago office and led it there, and transitioned into a full-blown director head of sales role there. Scaled that office from 20 people to over 400, and my original team from 8 million to 80 million in 5 years. So that was a fun journey of scaling and mistakes and weird stuff and lots of great contests and lots of really cruddy ones. And so we're going to talk about that. And then COVID gave me, I'm going to call it an opportunity to find a new home, a new career path. And I had a lot of options, but I chose to go to SalesAssembly, where I can help multiple companies scale and basically do what I was doing as a head of sales for one company and help all of our members do the same thing. So I was able to kind of give myself a larger megaphone and really help tech companies scale in a new sort of innovative way.
That's so cool. I imagine it's really rewarding getting to solve different problems almost on a daily basis, because you're interacting with so many different companies. I'm sure it's never a dull moment.
Never. It's like a minute by minute shift. But I mean, I found that I think boredom is the killer of motivation and passion. And so for me, I would choose a busy day where I'm snapping all day and kind of firing on all cylinders than one where I don't have a lot to do. And so I love this kind of work. I've realized I've gone from sales executive to entrepreneur, and I'm not going back. So
yeah, I love it. Isn't it funny that our brains kind of trick us into sometimes thinking we don't want to do anything, but as soon as we're not doing anything, then we're like miserable. So I'm with you. Stay busy. All right, and also joined by Matt Payne. Matt, welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Pumped to be here. I think it's such a great topic. I've been in sales for a long time. And certainly participated in a ton of competitions and led quite a few competitions. And then I joined a company, SalesScreen, that leverages gamification to create and help sales leaders create this incredible atmosphere of winning and celebrations and competitions. And so it's kind of cool. I live and breathe this topic every single day. And it's kind of amazing. We analyzed like 23,000 competitions over the last year. And it's really kind of incredible what we learned and what our clients have learned, and how consistently shitty a lot of competitions are across the board. And that's the reality. And I think that that's why a lot of people have signed up for this webinar. It's a cool topic to talk through. There's a lot of stuff that we'll talk through today to help everybody come up with some new ideas and have some more fun across the organization.
Cool. I love it. Yeah, and that's our promise to attendees is, share some actionable stories and leave everyone with sort of a framework of a few things to try. But I got to quickly go back, Matt, to your superhero origin story, and maybe if you'll share that crazy story that you were just sharing right before we jumped on this webinar. That's a pretty cool sales story.
It is kind of wild. So right before this webinar started, we were talking about another webinar where somebody was talking about a gigantic, like $1 billion deal that they were a part of. And I mean, my story is the first $1 million deal. I haven't quite hit the B category yet. Let me know if anybody's interested. But my first $1 million deal that I was part of actually was happening and in procurement during the birth of my child. So total chaos, biggest deal of my life, really amazing and awesome. The clients were super cool, and literally, like, it closed during the birth of my child. Client sent a onesie with their logo on it for my baby. It was incredible. It was a really incredible experience. And thankfully, my wife, super supportive. It's the biggest deal of both of our lives. So it's great. Yeah,
that's wild. Did you name your baby after your champion over there, or any influence?
Part of the deal.
Part of the deal, rather than.
At that stage, I was kind of throwing whatever I could into the mix to get it done before the baby was born. But I did not. My wife thanks me. I did not promise baby naming rights as part of the deal.
Probably smart. Awesome. All right, let's dive into it. And quick hellos. Hello, John. Thanks for joining us. Ejaz, Ebony. What's up? Thank you so much for spending the time. But let's dive into it. And when we were kind of having our pre-webinar call, we thought a good place to maybe start was starting with why. Like, why is this topic more relevant and more important than ever right now? And Christina, I'll start with you there.
I think it's important because the professional landscape is only going to get more and more competitive. There's going to be a lot more that is dazzling to not only our sales reps' eyes, but also sales leadership's eyes, right? There's going to be constant distractions in terms of where the grass is greener. And we can say as much as we want that the grass is greener where you water it, but so often the way that we water our own grass are with shallow sales contests that are kind of cloaked in wanting to be as good as we can for our sales reps and motivate and inspire, but usually hidden by an underlying business need of wanting more dollars faster and now. And so while we're trying to dazzle and inspire and motivate our internal teams, there are a lot of companies right now that are doing the same thing in a much simpler way without kind of a prove it and then we'll give you something. So I think right now it's critical to look at the way that we're motivating our teams, the way that we're motivating our people, why we're doing it. and developing a plan that keeps people happy where they are and feels transparent and something that feels attainable and achievable for the right reasons. So if you don't make a plan to properly motivate and inspire your people, somebody else will. That's just the reality right now, and it's what we were hearing on the ground. So this is a really pertinent time to have this conversation.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I read a fact somewhere around, it was like around 34 or 33% of millennials were planning on changing jobs after the pandemic. And there has sort of been this moment where people are rethinking a lot of their lives and what they want to do. And to your point of like distractions, there's a lot out there, there's like, people are getting into e-commerce, cryptocurrency, all these things are out there. And so you need to create a culture of winning to keep people engaged, because you're battling not just people in our profession, but all this crazy noise in this increasingly strange world that we all live in. Matt, same question to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a really important stat that you just said there, but it's not just millennials. I mean, the national stats on salespeople is that 34% of a sales force turns over every year. I mean, that, it's not just millennials. That's the reality that sales leaders are facing, right? And the other part of that, the other stats that I think really just complement what Christina said, she was spot on there. For only 48% of reps on average across sales organizations exceed their quota, so more than half of your sales team is not exceeding their quota. Only 15% of CROs are confident that they're going to hit their numbers, right? So sales leaders just don't even feel that they're currently set up for success. And less than 20% of sales reps like their job in general. So, wow. I mean, that's the reality of many sales leaders across the world, really. And it's such an important part of why sales leaders need to create an environment that people want to be a part of, and to Christina's point, I mean, there are things that you could do to create a better environment that are going to help retain your people and get them to excel in their roles.
Yeah, totally. Well said. All right. So what makes sales competitions suck? And Matt, I'll go with you on this one. 23,000, what was it? 23,000 sales competitions that you've seen and I'll have data points on? That's wild.
And that's just in 2020, right? So, there's a lot of data that exists that happens to run through our system specifically, but like, everybody's running competitions. Every organization tries to run some sort of competition, whether they're successful or not. And maybe I'll just give the kind of basic framework of where things fall apart, and then we'll dive into it. So what we discovered is that there are about 5 reasons why things either fail or succeed, and they're good topics to explore throughout every organization, regardless of the industry that you're in, regardless of the company size. These are things that apply to everybody. So first is visibility. Can reps see what the competition's all about, what the rules are, where they stand, are they getting updates regularly? How do they compare against their peers? Like, that kind of stuff. So can they see the results? And do they know the rules? The other part is every sales competition is like a traditional format that's designed for your top performers. It's the top 20% that win the majority of your sales competitions. And so people use the same traditional format over and over again. Non-personalized prizes, it's just so consistent. People don't care about the prizes that are involved in the competition, and therefore they're not really motivated by it. Repetition fatigue, like people companies run the same competitions over and over and over again, and they get stale and boring, and people start to lose interest. And then misaligned metrics and timeframes is the other thing that's really it's wild to see, and it's something that can easily be adjusted. Some metrics like high volume activity-based metrics are really great for short-term competitions versus, end of funnel metrics are better for longer term competitions, and everybody just tries to lump it all together. So those are the 5 areas that I think are key to focus in on as you start to plan out your next competition.
Mm-hmm. Those are great, and I look forward to diving into those a little bit more. What's a basic way to measure the success of a contest? And Christine, maybe I'll get your thoughts. Like, is it on team morale and team happiness, or is it on simply, helping us boost by 20%? What are your thoughts on measuring success?
Well, in order to measure success, you have to know what you're measuring and why you're doing it. So it kind of goes back to what I said at the start, which is most of the time we're running sales contests to say that we're boosting morale or increasing happiness or adding to the culture. But the reality is, behind the scenes, it's the end of the quarter. We need a 20% boost. We're running behind on our annual plan. Our VR is dropping. We need bigger deals, better deals, faster deals, right? Like there's something behind it. So I would say, in order to judge the success of the competition, whatever it is, and I'm not saying it's not okay to run a contest when you need better business metrics, like that is okay. I would gear toward being transparent about that with your people, because if everybody is bought into the same idea, then everyone's marching in the same direction, and there's a way to communicate that properly. So the first thing is determine why you're doing the contest. And when you know why you're doing the contest, then you can assign success criteria. Success criteria for a monetary based contest or a revenue based contest can simply be the lift in dollars or logos or VR or whatever it may be, ASP, associated with that contest over a period of time. And you can look at that month over month or year over year, right? So simply, how did we perform during this time of this contest a month ago and a year ago at the same time? And what was the lift? And was it worth what we paid out in the prizes for this contest? On the flip side of that, you can always run those metrics to determine, like, hey, did it help us make more money or get more logos? Great. But if you are truly running this as a morale boost, a great thing to do is to survey your people shortly after and determine, how did it make them feel? Ask a lot of qualitative questions. But be prepared, if you're going to ask people about their feedback and their happiness and their feeling like they belong at work, that if your contest missed the mark, that you're willing to listen to it and make changes. So success criteria can look qualitative or quantitative, but you got to know what you're measuring and why. And if your people don't know what you're measuring, then you're misaligned no matter what.
Yeah, that's great advice. Matt, is that what you see as well when you're talking to folks in the market? Are they gearing towards morale? Are they gearing towards lift? And what are the success criteria that you see a lot of folks using? And are any more effective than others?
Yeah, I think what Christina said is very much in line with what we see. I think there are a couple ways to break it down too. I think, I love what you said, that like it all comes down to culture is like really what people are trying to adjust. Yes, they need to close more deals, but really, if they can improve the culture or change the culture, everything else comes with it. And the culture part is difficult to measure. I mean, the customer satisfaction or the employee satisfaction surveys are really a great way to do it. Come up with the questions in advance. But when it comes to metrics in general, I really liked what Christina said about picking the metrics in advance, understanding what you need to change, and then creating a competition to change those particular metrics. And then making sure you compare. So one of the things that we see people do is compare during the course of a competition. So, if you're running a week-long competition on meetings booked, for example, right? It's a great way to infuse some excitement. Sometimes just SDR teams are in this. Sometimes it's a combination or a partnership between SDRs and AEs. But know what your benchmark is. Lay it out so people can see what an average week's worth of activities are. And then throughout the competition, compare to that number. And then watch it get blown out of the water, right? And visualizing that, you need to make sure you share that data as often as possible. When it comes to visibility, the more frequently you can update your team, the closer you can get it to real time. I mean, everybody lives in a world of instant gratification. That's it. Like, we get news updates instantly. So why not update sales progressions? Why not update contests as frequently as you possibly can? And then compare to benchmark data all along the way. Like, that alone it will help. So just like reinforcing the concept of measuring in the first place is important. Comparing the benchmarks and actually displaying the results is really important.
Yeah. So let's dive into visibility then, because there's a lot of different ways you could like serve this up. Maybe you're just trying to hack it together yourself and you're just sending updates via email or Slack. What are some of the best practices for making something more visible? Is it like a Salesforce dashboard that you can go to? What are your thoughts on making sure it's kind of that the whole team is feeling like, okay, we can see everything, even though we could be all across the world?
I would say engineer the contest based on your means. What I mean by that is if you know that this is going to be grassroots and you are having to manage the results and visibility of the progress on your own, then don't engineer a contest. It's going to be really complicated for you to do that. Like if you don't have the support to build, like, because, we can say like, oh, you build a dashboard, but like dashboards can be complicated and heaven forbid it's inaccurate, because you will not see a sales rep become an analyst faster than if they are represented on a contest dashboard. And I will go one step further to say that that's what you want also. Like, right, you want them so bought in that they know exactly what their number is and they want to see everybody else's. So the first thing is go with your means, right? If you're going to have to keep track of this in a Google Doc or on a whiteboard, like I've seen a lot of contests where you're like scribbling in a temperature gauge on a whiteboard and you're like, we're like to there. I don't know. It's like not scientific, but we're like this close, right? You just have to make sure that you know what your means are and then make sure the tracking goes along with that. If you have some operational help along the way, loop them in ahead of time and let them know the kinds of metrics that you want to report out on, and ask them ahead of time if it's possible that they provide you support in the visibility of that. So this also kind of goes to, potentially a later point that we're going to hit, but is that sales contests need a little bit of prep if you're going to get them right. And a little bit of prep doesn't mean weeks of prep, but it means a couple of days to determine what are we doing, how are we going to do it, and then to this point, how are we going to make sure that people know where they're tracking? Also, set the proper expectations with your people. We are going to report on results daily. We're going to report on results weekly. You're going to be able to see the results of the contest and the pacing on an hourly basis. Like, let them know how often they can check the results and give them that expectation ahead of time. And ahead of that, you should have had the conversations already to determine what is the right cadence and what kind of internal support do you have. There is nothing worse than engineering an amazing contest, realizing that you don't have the support to actually provide the visibility or the tracking, and then the whole thing crashes and burns. And you'd be surprised how often that happens. Maybe this room wouldn't be surprised, but like the hypothetical you would be surprised how often that happens.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love your point on you'll never see a salesperson become an analyst faster. I think that's how I originally learned how to build dashboards, just because I was so sick of my dashboard being wrong that I'm just gonna go in there and figure this out. So Matt, so from your perspective, you've seen a ton of these contests. Do you have maybe some examples or a story of one that you've ran or come across that really just hit the mark with some of these 5 things we've talked about: visibility, format, prizes, repetition, metrics? One that had those all just like wrapped together nicely.
Yeah, sure. I think first of all, I love Christina's comment about sales reps becoming an analyst. It's literally like they click the button inside of Salesforce that they closed the deal, and they're like staring at the spreadsheet to update. Like, come on,
How everyone learned how to build a pivot table.
Yeah, right. Like but at the same time, that's the world we live in. And so the more that you can make it update in as close to real time as possible, like the better it'll be. There are some technology platforms out there that make that easier for you. The point is to be prepared in advance, what Christina said, and live within your means. If you've got the ability to set it up to update in real time, do it. If you don't overpromise, because it does happen. You overpromise and it falls apart. I think from a kind of an end-to-end perspective, I think one of the things to think about is every screen that you have access to can be some sort of a motivational speaker. And so some of the best competitions that I've seen leverage updates in a lot of different areas. And so, one of them that I see is in advance of a competition, you start with like your revenue team call or the all hands as like an announcement of what's coming next week, for example. And so starting off before the competition even begins, raising awareness about the competition. So not just your sales reps know, but other people in the organization know. Because if people are not in sales, they're still excited about the sales that happen for the company that they work for, right? So getting more people involved from the beginning and having an understanding that a competition is going to begin is a great way to do it. And then posting the results as frequently as possible, wherever you possibly can, whether it's sending out Slack updates or whether it's connecting your results into a TV screen in the pit of an office, if we ever make it back into an office, whether it's a dashboard that's on a screen or a link that you can send out or a visual that you can send periodically to the company email address. But I recommend not just limiting it to the salespeople involved in the competition, but broaden the amount of people that will celebrate with you, right? So I think that's something that I've seen done really well is leverage all your means of communication and keep it as regular as possible. The prizes, that's an interesting one to talk about. I think we should dive into that a little bit because it's so common that everybody just does like a gift card, or $250 for this, or like,
Starbucks gift card. We've got that in the chat. Starbucks gift card, gas card, a mystery prize. Those are like the super common ones. What are some better ones you've seen, Matt?
Well, I think, I'm curious. I don't know that we're set up to do a poll here, but I'd be really curious to see how many of you actually ask your sales reps what they want to win. It's an important thing to think about because, like the concept of a sales manager like in craft beer. And so they give away craft beers or they give away a fancy bottle of wine or Starbucks gift cards or a Yeti backpack cooler. Those are cool for some people, but not everybody cares about those particular prizes. And so, our advice is ask, what do people want? And then give them the option to win it. Some of the cooler companies that I've seen do this are leveraging a coin model, where over the course of a series of competitions, they accumulate coins like a digital currency. And then at the end of the competition, the winners or the people that have won things throughout the competition or series of competitions have the ability to cash out their coins for the prize that they want. Right. So you've got, 10 prizes that people can choose from that people have given their input on, like what the prize they want. And maybe for somebody it's a masterclass subscription. And for another person, it's a Yeti cooler. And, all of those are options. And as long as you're working toward coins and accumulating coins over time, you've got the ability to cash it out.
I think that's a great way of doing it. The perfect example of that is when you said, a masterclass subscription. My ears perked up, but that would be cool. That would be motivating, but everyone gets motivated by different things. There was an interesting comment from Ebony, and I've actually been a part of this, and it was one of our most effective for PTO, using PTO as a lever or a prize for contests. Christina, what's your take on that?
I have often, the idea of being able to take time off and additional time off feels amazing. In practice, it looks like working a lot harder for 4 days to get that 5th day off. It's like true PTO, you have to pay for somewhere, even when you're taking regular PTO, right? Because the promise of PTO isn't, we're going to give you less job responsibilities as a result of this. It's no, still do the same job and hit the same target, just do it in less time and then take a day for you. So I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but what I'm saying is that I have seen PTO related incentives go a little bit sour when the recipient sort of realizes like, oh shoot, like I'm going to take that extra PTO day next week, and now next week is going to be like horrific. You know, and so I think it depends. It depends. I've always found interesting incentives to be things that people don't think about when you ask them, what do you want it to be? Because on the one hand, I love the concept of asking your people and bringing them in. But if you've got a team of 8 people, you might get 8 different answers. And then you're like, oh no. But on the flip side, one thing that can be kind of fun is like a pick the bill you want me to pay, right? Like one thing that everybody has to pay are their bills, their rent, their car payment, their credit card bill, whatever it may be. And those things are never fun to pay for. So if you tell me like, I'm going to give you a $250 gift card, or I'm going to pay your cable and internet bill for the month. It's the same dollars, but when you say that if I win this contest, you're going to pay my cable bill for me, that's pretty cool. Like that feels like a different result. And if it's kind of like a pick the bill, and then depending on first place to 4th or 5th place, it's like first place is we pay your rent or we pay your mortgage. Second place is we pay your car payment or your daycare payment for your kids, or, you know, and you kind of pick the, like, choose the bill. And so you're working toward the money that's in your account staying there instead of, you know, like, so the idea of something like that can make it so that everyone feels like they get something that they want because everybody's got a bill to pay. So I tend to think of incentives like that can feel really meaningful for people, but you can also play with the amounts.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Well,
From the number one rep, can I get my taxes paid for? That would be awesome.
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's a really cool idea. And I think it, you know, I think it plays well for different types of teams. And that's the other thing for you guys to think about is, you know, which it's not a one size fits all model, right? And some prizes are going to fit better for certain teams. The PTO concept, we've got a reward shop that people put prizes into, and it's extremely common. It's in our reward shop for almost every company. But the teams that it really applies more for are more of the junior teams, the SDR sides of the organization. You know, that's it's not very commonly cashed out by, like, you know, enterprise AE or a strategic rep or anything. But sometimes, especially for the SDR organizations, it's a cool, like, you know, bust it throughout the entire week. You know, you've been maybe winning a series of competitions over the course of the quarter, and maybe you want to cash out for like a Friday off kind of thing. It's an interesting concept for sure. And it's nice to give away free prizes sometimes too. You know, like not every prize that you give away in a competition has to be a dollar amount. You know, so that's another thing to think about too. Personal time off. We've got a really popular one where people like to give away, they choose push-ups for somebody to have to do on the weekly all hands call, you know, so it doesn't have to be push-ups, but that's what a lot of folks, a lot of things that I see are choosing somebody to have to do push-ups on the Friday call.
Yeah, I like those. You can get really, really creative with it. I'm trying to think of ones. I've had one of my leaders back in the day got me very specific. It was a gift card, but he had went above and beyond to find out my favorite restaurant in the city and got that. So it was super nice. And then, you know, you can go with your significant other or whatever, and it's kind of like a moment. So things like that are great. All right, I wanted to move on to format. So this was an important one. And Matt, you said something earlier that you see most sales competition formats only motivate the top performers, or the top 20%. What did you mean by that? Walk me through that.
Well, most competitions are often like volume-based competitions, right? It's like most sales before the end of a certain period, or most meetings booked before the end of a certain period, largest deal size, you know, those kinds of things. Most organizations have consistent top performers, you know, whether it's the top 5% of your sales force, maybe it's 5 people or 10 people, depending on the size of your organization. They tend to win those things all the time. Like there's an SDR or a group of SDRs that just crush it. They do. Like they're motivated by themselves. They don't need competitions to crush it. That's just who they are. That's why you love those people, right? But sales competitions that are like, do the most of this and you win a prize, are designed for top performers. And what happens when the same people win the prizes over and over again, or if you have a competition and somebody blows it out of the water in the beginning, everybody else looks at that as like, it's unattainable. I'm not going to catch that person. I'm not going to get the prize. And then it becomes a demotivator, which is the exact opposite of what most people are trying to do, right? So it's important to think about your competitions in a way that allows you to have some variety. So more than just the top performer can get involved and have a chance of winning. It's the element of like, I've got a chance. Like, it doesn't matter, if I've historically been a bottom performer or I'm the top performer, like everybody should have a chance of winning. And that's how you should really think about the type of competition that you're running each time.
Yeah, great things to think about. I would almost challenge that or do offer another perspective, because I've also been on part of teams where the top performers weren't always the ones with the biggest volume. And then they would get demotivated when we would do volume based, like, okay, now you got to hit this many ops, and they'd be, or deals, whatever. And they're like, well, it's actually my best interest if I just work this amount of deals, because I know I'll be able to get them done. I don't want to just do it for that. But it is the same line of thinking, right? It's making sure that, I guess, the incentive is fair for everyone. It's a difficult thing to do, though. Christina, how do you think about, because Matt, I couldn't agree more that there's nothing worse than an unlevel playing field, like demotivates everyone so quickly. Christina, how do you think about making sure these things are fair?
The first thing is, to that point you just made, you also don't want to take your high performing people and like switch their target on them, right? Like if somebody is a high performer because they have deals that have a really high average sale price, but a lower volume, the last thing that you want to do is start pushing them to stop that behavior and start a more front of funnel, high volume behavior, because that could impact the bottom line really, really negatively. Teams are rarely made up of identical clones of each other, which means part of the reality is, if you're like straining your system to be like, how do we create a contest that is equally motivating for everybody and fair to everybody and gives everybody a chance and is also a prize that every single person would want to be motivated by, trying to do that is actually why your sales contests suck, because you can't do that. And you spend so much time thinking about how to do that the end result winds up being like a garbage can. You're just like, I don't know, I do this. And it just winds up being the thing that goes back to why you're running the sales incentive in the first place, which is we need more money now. We need more deals now, right? So the first thing is, consider an individual component and a team component, right? If the idea is I want everyone to feel like they win, not everyone can be first place, second place, or third place. But what you don't want is the person who is like, this is not my contest to win. You still want them to feel like they have a piece of the pie. So having an individual win component and then a team win component is great, because it's like, look, I know that this is not the contest I'm going to win. The contest that we're doing in 3 months, I'm going to win that one. But this one, I'm going to do my parts, I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to win the team prize. And the team prize is everybody gets a lunch, everybody gets a dinner, everybody gets a gift card. It's like if the team achieves this, it's the team metric, everybody gets something. So there's the idea of I don't have to win to win. You want people to know what are their contests they can run for and what are the ones where they're like, this is probably not my contest, but I'm going to up level a little bit because I want that team component. So I would say that that's probably a great way to solve for it. But if you're trying to be like, I need the perfect contest, it's probably not going to exist. And when you try to make it exist, then like things get really weird. So just embrace it. And it goes back to, why are you doing the contest in the first place? Go back to your why, go back to your end in mind. Sometimes it may mean that you have a conversation with your top performer or your middle performer or your lower performer and talk about the contest and the why and say, I don't want you to change your behavior, or I do if it's a lower performer. And here's why. I still want you to feel like you're getting something out of it. So help the team out, keep doing what you do, and you'll win the team component. Next time, I think it's going to be much more in your wheelhouse. Like, just be transparent with your people about it.
Yeah, Christina, that's, so spot on. The idea of running simultaneous competitions is the way to do it. You're never going to pick one competition that's going to solve every problem, but you can definitely run simultaneous competitions, because don't get me wrong, you don't want to forget about the top performers. You don't want to run a competition that they're going to love, right? Like that's not the point either. You need to keep those top performers happy and excited and winning things, because they're competitive in the first place and you don't want them to leave. But running simultaneous competitions is a great way to do it. And then the other thing to think about is and what I mean by that is often individual based and team based simultaneously. So everybody's included. It's a great way to build camaraderie across the team. The other variation that I've seen a lot of people do is switch up the teams. So if you've got a national workforce, especially while so many of us are remote still right now, is to switch the teams up a little bit and pick people from different regions. That's a great way to get people connected that maybe used to be flying into offices periodically to meet with each other, that kind of stuff. So changing up the teams. The other approach there is maybe a couple different formats. So one that we commonly see is a lottery-based format. So, if it's competition to drive new opportunity creation, every time you create a new opportunity during the time period, you get a lottery ticket. At the end of the time period, the more opportunities you created, the more tickets you get, and the greater your chances that you won. It also applies to different types of competitions. So, it's important to think, like, for instance, we're having competition right now in SalesScreen where we have an initiative to get more executive alignment in all of our deals. Right? It's kind of up-leveling the conversation, get an executive aligned with their executive. And so every time that you bring an executive into an executive level meeting, you get a ticket into the lottery, right? Like that's a way to motivate kind of AEs and strategic AEs in their late stage deal cycles to make sure that there is executive alignment in there. So it's not just, SDR related competitions or anything like that. It's including those. And then the other thing to think about too, a really common one that I see where, especially on the team side of things, a really great motivator from a format perspective is setting multiple targets. So you can have different prize structures depending on how close you get or how far past the goal you get in your competitions. So, especially when you're doing a simultaneous individual and team competition, this one's really great to spark extra team excitement and enthusiasm, where like, if you get to 50% of your goal, everybody gets a lunch. If you get to 75% of your goal, everybody gets happy hour. If you get to 100% of your goal, everybody gets happy hour and appetizers. And if you get to 150% of your goal, it's like, we're renting the whole place out, bring your significant other and let's have a party, right? Like that's, so lots of options there for you.
That was a lot of gold in that one. I really like this idea of switching up teams, like not doing it by region. I love that. If you could get it so, your San Francisco team is with some people on the London team, and then they have to start working together, and those lines of communication become so important for future deals. I think that's a really, really great piece of advice. I also really like the lottery ticket idea so that everyone feels like they have a shot. And then the last bit you touched on, which I think we should spend a little time talking about, is I think it's genius when you're incentivizing these micro steps in the sales process, right? You mentioned executive alignment. Every sales process or a sales contest I've ever been a part of has always kind of just been this end of funnel, whether it's a meeting or an opportunity or a closed deal. But I love this idea of breaking up. Be like, hey, every mutual action plan that you set up with the prospect, you'll get a lottery ticket. Is that what you're seeing, that more people move towards that? Because I think it's brilliant. You're directly incentivizing the behavior that gets you to the actual end result. Then that will carry forward, in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we're seeing. And there's a story. I actually saw this video of Urban Meyer, and I don't know if some people may love or hate or not even know who Urban Meyer is, but he's a famous American football coach that really became famous at the University of Utah. And this commentary that he was giving was what he did to change the culture at Utah. And John Hill hates him. I love it. It's totally fine. I don't even like Urban Meyer either, but I like his approach, and that's what's important. And his philosophy in changing the culture and creating a winning culture at Utah was to make everything a competition. These are all like top performing athletes. They're salespeople. They're their salespeople are naturally competitive in the first place. They naturally like to celebrate anything possible that they can celebrate, right? They always like to be told they're doing a good job. And so competitions are really important. So what I mean, where I'm taking that is like, you should really think about introducing competitions for all of the types of behaviors you're trying to encourage, right? And so it's not just the classic SDR type of goals, right? Which those are important too, like volume-based metrics. It doesn't have to be that. So the mutual action plan, that's another focus of ours here internally. It's an active competition through the end of the quarter.
Nice.
Executive alignment is another one too. And the idea being that it's all designed to encourage the types of behavior that you're driving. And a lot of times it's driven by the enablement side of the house, not necessarily just the the VP of sales or the sales leader of your team. It's really the more you work these foundational types of competitions into the mix, the more your whole organization can start to think about, how do we drive the best type of behavior? How do we get more people excited about doing the little things that we want them to do to become a better organization? So absolutely, it's extremely common.
Yeah, I really like that, because I feel like when you just focus on the outcomes, you're going to get everyone to work harder. That's kind of what's going to happen. But if you're rewarding people on their habits and behavior, you're getting them to work smarter, and they'll continue to work smarter, because you're kind of forcing them to do this motion. So I think that's brilliant. Christina, what are your thoughts on maybe breaking up the contest into micro behaviors and incentivizing those?
I think it levels the playing field, like we were talking about, where it's, if you do only front of the funnel metrics, your front of the funnel will look really good. Conversion's going to suck. So like your average like opportunity to deal close, your pipeline conversion is gonna tank. If you're only focusing it on the end of the funnel, you're going to get a lot of deals, but they may not be your ICP. They may not be the right deals. They may be too heavily discounted. They may be pushed through, because when you incentivize what I call the bun, it's like, you don't know what the meat's going to be. It's like, if we're playing with either end of it, it's not good. But if you focus on the core skills and behaviors that either help you to identify a proper ideal customer profile, or to identify what is the right deal for this customer, what is the right product, and will they renew time and time again? Like, am I closing a good deal for the company? The way that you do that is not by incentivizing either, it's by focusing in the middle on the typical areas where you see that fall off. So you can run a really good contest if you have ever done any kind of pipeline analysis with your teams and determined where the weak points of your sales process are. And newsflash, you can make that public to them. Like, we are really, really rough from discovery to contract send. Something with our team is happening between the discovery and when we actually send the contract. There's drop off there. Let's hone in on that specific part of the funnel and see what's broken, and can we incentivize that to help everybody up level their skills, so that after this contest, you're still making more money than you were before the contest, right? The contest is over. Now you're a stronger employee, you're hitting your targets, and now you're making more money. Maybe you didn't win the contest, but now you're kind of winning at life because you're a better professional. So it's like focusing in on those individual metrics based on need. You can be transparent about that, but you actually up level the organization by doing that as well, versus a flash in the pan contest.
Yeah, it's a really great point. And it's a really great topic too, because I think when a lot of sales leaders think about competitions, they forget about the little stuff in between that are really what transform your sales organization. That's what up levels the middle of the pack, which is who you really need to coach and train in the first place. Right? Like, you don't need to up level the top performers. You need to get your middle 80% or middle 60% to a higher level. And focusing on a series of competitions that drive reinforcement of the behaviors you're coaching and teaching them is really important. It also kind of connects into the idea of prizes, because like the idea of running a lot of little competitions, I think your mutual action plan example was great. I think the idea of executive alignment is another one that are really common that we see across a lot of organizations right now. If you only give it away to the top 3 or 4 people in those competitions, depending on the size of your organization, it also demotivates people. So the other thing for you to think about when you're running these kinds of competitions, especially more frequent, maybe, not big deal focused, but when you're running these kinds of competitions, think about the amount of prizes you're giving away and the amount of people that can win. All of our research shows that you should try to give away some level of a prize to at least the top 50% in a competition. That certainly doesn't mean that we are participation trophy, advocates. Like, it's not giving away something to everybody, but the idea is it's really similar to Formula One racing, right? Like Formula One racing has 20 drivers in it. There are really only 2 cars right now that can win because of the engines and the body styles and things like that. It's Mercedes and Red Bull, and those are the only 2 cars that can win, but there's still 20 people driving around ridiculously fast, almost dying every single week. And the reason for that is that there's a teardropping of prizes. So everybody that gets into the top group wins a prize and wins money and wins points. And so one thing for you to think about when you're doing these types of competitions, especially as you think about doing more and more competitions, is start to teardrop the prizes. You don't have to give away big prizes for every person, but if there are 20 people in your organization, maybe you do like, if you run a coin model, for example, you can do like 1,000 coins for the winner and teardrop it down to 10 coins for 10th place or something like that. And that gives everybody a reason to fight to win. There could still be a battle for 10th place. Or if you're an organization that has 150 sales reps, you can have a battle for 75th place. Like it does happen. So I'd encourage you to think about that, to expand the number of people that receive prizes, try to make it easy for people to win something, and let them compete against each other. And you'll see a significant improvement in participation and enthusiasm about your competition.
I like it. Again, lots of actionable stuff there. Again, my light bulb moment was, I think this idea that you as a leader, you could look at your funnel, right? You look at all your typical metrics, meeting, opportunity, conversion rates all along, and wherever you're struggling, you could run a very hyper-specific contest for that metric, and then do all the things that you just mentioned, Matt, tier it out and all that. And you would have such a lasting effect above and beyond just that. So that was my light bulb moment. It's always great when I get a page of notes to these. It's awesome. Cool. Okay, I want to sneak this question in, and then Matt, I want you to quickly run through kind of like a summary, because we touched on quite a few things, but I always like to sneak this question in. And Christina, I'm going to start with you. If I had a time machine and I can take Christina Brady back to the very first year that you started selling, what piece of advice would you give Christina at that time?
So many people fall into sales. And then you either fall in love with it and it becomes your career, or you use what you learned and you take that somewhere else. I was one of those people, due to unfortunate circumstances in my life, that I fell into sales via necessity. And when you're doing things reactively and out of urgency and necessity, you don't always make the right decisions. And what I mean is, my first sales job, I was a financial planner for MetLife. And that was at age 20, 2021. And so that was an easy job to get. I was able to sell and get my licensing, but I very quickly realized that a job like that, where there was no guaranteed base pay, it was all commission and it was all focused on selling the product that would make you the most money. They didn't say that, but it was between the lines. I realized I was good at selling, but I was selling something that wasn't a win-win. And I would go home every night and have to question, did I make the right decisions for the people that I'm sitting in their house and telling them I'm here to help you? Am I actually helping them? Or am I trying to pay my bills? If you are in a position as a salesperson where you're asking yourself, did I really help that person? Or am I just trying to pay my bills? Never take that job, never sell that product. Even if that's not the intention of the product, if that's the way that you feel, there's misalignment somewhere, if I could go back to myself, I would say definitely fall into sales, because I didn't realize that being in this industry was going to wind up being my home and what I love and what I've done for 15 years after that. But what I would have said is think about what you're selling and why you're doing it. Integrity and morality come first, no matter what, no matter what. And if you use that as your guiding light in your life, you'll always be okay. And you might help a person or two along the way.
Mm-hmm. I love it. This is why I always try and sneak that question in, because some of the best stuff comes from it. Excellent advice. Thank you so much for sharing. Could not agree more. Matt, same question to you.
Yeah, I love that. I have really kind of a similar point there, but I'll give everybody a slight variation. I think my perspective is we're all human. You know, the authenticity comment I think is really valuable. We are humans, and we're selling and speaking to other humans, and don't forget that. Like, it's just, that's extremely important. Treat people like they deserve to be treated, and expect them to treat you the same. It's a good mentality to have. The other part of it is that I think I fell into sales as well. I thought that I was just like social and could talk to people, and like, didn't know what else I was really good at, and thought that was a real thing. And what I would encourage people to understand is that only gets you so far. There's structure, there's a process, there are tools and tips out there to make you really think about, how do I be better at getting to the point? How do I help my clients and prospects understand how to do their jobs better? Like, there are tools, there are tips, and I wish I learned that a little bit sooner in my life.
Mm-hmm. Again, excellent advice. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Matt, if you want to bring us home with a quick roundup of some of the things that we covered.
Good luck.
Yeah, right. I think there's I was going to show you, maybe I'll speed real quick through this quick visual for you guys, because I think it does. Oops. Maybe I won't, because I can't share, Scott, but it's okay. I think really they're kind of like 8 steps to competition success that if anybody wants to hit me up, I've got a real simple 1-pager for you to look at about the 8 steps. But I think the first part, Christina hit this early on, is do a gap analysis, understand what the metrics are that you need to have an impact on, and then focus your competition on those particular aspects, right? So the other part is clearly define those KPIs and metrics that you're going to put into the competition so that you can launch it with a clear goal. Choose an appropriate competition length. So keep that in mind. High volume activities, the shorter the better. Late stage funnel, that's okay to do a longer competition, but the shorter the better. You'll have stronger results. Create explicit rules. Let everybody know what the rules are in the competition. Create prizes that work for as many people as possible. Do a halftime or do a halftime talk to everybody. Make sure people are like doing okay, like what's going on, give them some feedback, and celebrate everything. Salespeople are excitable humans. Tap into that. It's a competition. Make it happen and celebrate hard. That is, do it. So
I love it. That was an incredible breakdown. I only gave you a minute and a half, and you cranked it all out. I love it. Cool. Well, Matt, Christina, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Thanks for hanging out with the community. For everyone who joined us, thanks for the thoughtful participation and questions. You two are pros. Thank you so much for sharing all your insight.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
See ya. Bye.